Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We will wait for a couple more minutes to let others join in on the call. Meanwhile, I'll share this this meeting minutes, so you can add your names to the attendees list. Also, like if you have anything to discuss on this call, feel free to add it as a topic in the agenda. Yeah, so this is the first community meeting of the year. So happy new year to everyone. And yeah, today we have some updates, and we also have a demo session, a tutorial session on APISIX in Kubernetes. Yeah, so we'll just wait for a couple of minutes and we'll get started. And if you are new to this call, if you are new to the APISIX community, feel free to introduce yourself in chat, or if you want, you can come off mute and introduce yourself. It is always nice to meet new people.
Hi everyone, Raghuram here. I am based in Bangalore. We are now evaluating API gateways. APISIX is one of them. So I'm interested in participating in the community. So I come with around 30 years of experience, and a good portion of it has been in product development. Nice meeting you all.
Nice to meet you, sir. That's great to hear. Like we would love to hear more about your use cases and like how you are planning to use API gateways. Yeah, definitely. And like if you are new here, like we also have a community channel on Slack, and we also have a mailing list. So like if you have questions or like if you need some tech support, you can definitely join this Slack channel.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm new here. Yeah, thanks for all the wishes.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have another newcomer. Hello, everyone. My name is Magnus Hedner. I'm from a company called Benify in Sweden, Stockholm. We are just setting up our new integration with the API gateway, for instance. I've been in the IT industry for 40 years now, working with APIs for last 6 or 7 years. I've been setting up in 2 Swedish banks API management, but that was based on commercial grade thingy. So now it's on an open source platform, and that will be very, very exciting. And it looks like Apache APISIX is really, really a good thing, a good platform. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and welcome to the community. And it's lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
Anyone else, feel free to, don't be shy and just, we are all APISIX users or contributors or some way involved with APISIX. So feel free to introduce yourself. You can also introduce yourself in chat. If you are, if you don't have a mic, or like if you have any other issues, yeah. All right, I guess we are 4 past the proposed starting time, so let's get started. So welcome everyone to the Apache APISIX global community meeting. Today is the 1st of February, and we have 8 people on the call. So first off, we have a community update from Bober. So off to you, Bober.
Yeah, hey, hi everyone. Welcome to our global community meetup. I'm super excited to be here. First, before we get started, let me share my screen with my slides so we can kick off just a moment. I think this one is the right screen, and share this one, and then maybe I can switch to presenting mode and swap this. Now, can you see my screen? Nice. Yeah, great. It's actually the first meetup this year. As Navanda mentioned, that like we hosted 5, I think, meetups last year. Every month we have one time this meetup. Sometimes we're missing, like in the middle, like for example, Mr. January, because of many of us were on vacation and our community members also. And after quite long holidays, we came back, and we're really happy to host this next event and to bring some exciting topics, inspiring topics for our community to learn from each other. For those who are new, let me introduce myself. I'm Bobur. In English will be Tiger. If it's difficult to pronounce, you can just call me Tiger. I'm based in Tallinn, Estonia. I think with Magnus, we are close by, I would say, Estonia, Sweden. And I'm a developer. Yeah, sorry?
Good to hear that we are neighbors.
Yeah, I also work at a couple of Swedish companies, including this AstraZeneca. I was a software consultant for AstraZeneca. And then, yeah, you can find out me on my social channels if you have any few questions, or if you just want to have a chat or coffee break, just feel free to schedule a meeting. I will be always happy to collaborate with the people around the world. That's why we call it the global team and global community. We have an Apache APISIX. And the main purpose of this meeting, of course, to put everyone into one place, to bring some updates about community news, and also maybe discuss some roadmap of Apache APISIX, what you can see in the future. I think in the last year, in December, our PMC member, I think Ming, he also introduced our roadmap. If you want to see on the website, we can also share it, what kind of plans we have for the future. And here's my agenda for today. It's very short. I will talk about our YouTube improvements. We are still improving, bringing some tutorials, webinars, recordings, and our also meetup recordings will be published every month. And I will talk about also APISIX at global events, I mean third-party events. We are also going and speaking about APISIX. And we also contributed recently on a new page called How to Contribute. I'm also going to demo this. You can have a look. We'll deploy it soon on the APISIX website, but it's still on review page now. And then we created the new events calendar. That's also I will review today's talk. And we'll have also a new program called Guest Blog. If you don't know, I will talk about shortly about this program. So with that, let's get started then. So I can skip that. These YouTube videos, a little bit we try pushing more effort on improving our current YouTube videos. As you can see, we have some video lists about how to guide, how to start with the Apache APISIX, but we don't have some advanced tutorials that in our backlog. Of course, it's community. I mean, I will be happy also to call all other community members. If you would like to have some recorded videos, please submit it to me. I mean, you can just ping me. I can redesign it or make it beautiful and publish on our YouTube channel. And we also have a small plan also to create our tutorials on APISIX Kubernetes. That will be available upcoming months. You can expect like by the end of maybe May, we'll have some Kubernetes videos, and we are also redesigning some new to Apache APISIX playlist on our YouTube. I can even show you later, like by going to YouTube channel, you can have a look. I can share the link. Maybe Navanda also can put in the chat the YouTube channel link. Next, we have, you can also see a new events page available for our global communities who is aiming to bring some events, and you can also subscribe to this calendar. It is under general events page. Maybe it's better I can even show on my screen in just a moment. Yeah, here we go. As you can see, it's a new events calendar. You can see and follow some online and offline events we are speaking at. Mainly I'm speaking, or we have another developer advocate from France. His name Nicola. He's also delivering very interesting topics on API gateway and Kubernetes. And also next week, for example, I have free tickets for Developer Week in the US, or also virtually you can attend. It's all about APIs. I have also one talk on implementing resident applications with API Gateway. And of course, if you have new events that you know about APIs, maybe you know about any API Gateway related events, you can just register here by creating a new issue and fill out some necessary information like event title, event description, and maybe venue if it's online or offline, when and where it's happening, and which date, and you can submit this issue. It will automatically will appear here. If you would like to subscribe, of course, you can go and register with your email to receive some schedule on your calendar. So this is about the event page. Thanks to Namando, he was contributing mainly on this new events calendar page. Let me switch back to my, again, the slides. So next I have update is, of course, this is our statistics on YouTube. We are slowly progressing because of the materials we have, but the number of subscribers are still growing, and number of views also. And the next is events. Last year we participated in 86, I think, events in different regions. This year, for example, we 4 speakers had submissions over 100 in 23 countries. Top 5 countries, as you can see, is US, Germany, France, Poland, Croatia. Even you can see on the map in which area we are bringing more topics, including India, some part of China, and currently we have some accepted talks already, 53 for this year. You can check it out, the events page, to know about upcoming events, of course, anytime. And the next is our new how to contribute page. I can even show you, it's on preview. We find out that recently we don't have a proper contribute page for the new joiners, because sometimes people are struggling with to understand the basics. Even maybe the documentation flow is not perfect enough, but documentation flow, another topic to discuss. We are also working on it with the help of the community, and of course we need some feedbacks on that. Yeah, here what we added, for example, we added how to contribute page. What are the benefits you can get out of this contributing the APISIX or in Apache Software Foundation? And we put it here, new section about a step-by-step guide for the new joiners who would like to just try in practice the APISIX. I have a step-by-step guide. You can find out also under my repository. It's very well described. I mean, it's very straightforward. You can work on Docker, install the APISIX and try some of the main features like rate limiting, or even you can start by creating route and so on, like how you can observe your APIs and how you can make authentication available or the security. These plugin examples all here. It's for new joiners. For the advanced, we will have a tutorial soon. And next is we provide a section to new joiners also how a number of ways how you can contribute to Apache APISIX. Like it's not only about contributing to the code, right? We have a bunch of options. For example, you can share or retweet our posts on news updates on social channels, like we are on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Or for example, what you can do, you can write maybe the blog post. That's another topic I will bring soon. And also maybe you can sometimes create a video, present maybe APISIX at meetups. Maybe you can even host, organize some events locally, let's say in Sweden, maybe in the future we'll have one. Also, you can maybe propose some new features. It's also counted as a contribution, or even you can like create now new issues on APISIX, or maybe you can try to fix small issues, starting with like a good first issue, and maybe you can help us with improving documentation and so on. One good thing is by contributing this, if you are contributing, let's say, last 2 months, you will get immediately, I mean, you can claim your certification. Usually we give out this type of certificate and we'll accept you. And then the next step as a committer, Apache APISIX committer, in general, Apache Software Foundation committer. It takes like maybe 5 to 6 months, but if you like, if you're able to prove that you are contributing regularly, quite often, and you can even ask for recognition of certification. Here we have a small form, you can just submit. Just mention your name, what are you doing, from which company you are, or even just to describe what type of contribution you did recently. And then we can start from there. After giving you certification, we can show you the road, how you can, after 6 months, it's how you can become committer. Maybe in a year or in 2 years, you can become a project management committer. Here you can make description of what does it mean to be a let's say committer or the project manager committee member. There are some description, there are some benefits, of course. You can just read them out. So it's about how to contribute page. Now I can jump back to my presentation and show you a few things, last few things. Just a moment. I can go to here. And then next one is yes, new guest blog program. That one of our contributors, Daniel, was working working a lot, and he created also a submission form. What does it mean? Like if you want to share your expertise, your experiences with our community, you can participate in guest program. There are potential topics, right? That you can bring starting from some for beginners, some blog posts like about Apache APISIX, maybe some more technical articles, like how service mesh works, how Kubernetes ingress controller work, why we need to use ingress controller, this Apache APISIX, and so on. There are a bunch of options. If you don't have any idea, you can reach out to us. We can have some proposed list of topics for your blog post. What is exactly good for you? We have already some subscriptions and some subscribers. We have in many channels like DevTool or Hashnode, Medium, and we can also help you to promote your articles easily throughout these channels. Please check out this link. I think Daniel can also send this direct link to the form and the chat. You can try to participate in this program and read out more about information. Next, yes, our other community channel, as I mentioned, we have Slack channel. Please, you can join. We have Instagram. We are growing it, but we don't have TikTok yet, but maybe in the future. I'm just thinking also opening some TikTok by publishing the videos from recent events. But in Instagram, for our community members, who is actually maybe going to the event, maybe doing some fancy pictures. If you have some fancy pictures, feel free to just send me. I can publish it under our APISIX Instagram account. So with that, I think more or less we are in good with updates, but maybe next month we'll have more updates on APISIX features and new releases. But this time I decided maybe it can be helpful to share with you this new contributing, new how to contribute page, and also plus some updates on YouTube channel. So let's build our community future together. With that, my presentation is over. Here are some references I put here if you would like to follow up. Thank you for your attention. Now I can hand over to Navendo. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Bober. So I guess Bober will be sharing some links he mentioned in the chat soon.
Yeah,
But
sure.
you can find all links on the APISIX website, apisix.apache.org. All right, so now let's move on to the tutorial on APISIX in Kubernetes. Let me share my screen. Give me a minute. All right, I think you should be able to see terminal.
Yes,
Yep.
All right, so if you want to follow along on this tutorial, you can. So there is a GitHub repository which contains all the instructions on how you can follow along on this tutorial. So basically, we'll be deploying APISIX in Kubernetes, and we'll be using it to handle ingress traffic to your Kubernetes cluster. And I don't have a presentation for this, so I'll just walk through with a blog post. So basically, Kubernetes ingress. Are you able to see this diagram clearly, I guess? Bober, can you just confirm?
Yeah, it's very, very nice.
Okay, so basically, in your Kubernetes cluster, you have multiple services, multiple microservices, and you need some way to direct external traffic to your Kubernetes cluster. So that is where Ingress comes in. Ingress is a Kubernetes native resource. So basically, Ingress handles all the external traffic to your services. And Apache APISIX also can work as Kubernetes Ingress. So we have something called APISIX Ingress Controller, which is a wrapper around Apache APISIX. So APISIX Ingress Controller is Kubernetes natives. So it translates Kubernetes resources to APISIX configuration. So when a client is sending requests to APISIX, what APISIX does is it routes traffic to all of your backend services. So in this tutorial, I want to give you a hands-on demo on how you can do this, how you can configure APISIX Ingress. And for that, we'll be using a sample application. So this is the bare minimum API. So basically, you can deploy multiple versions of this API, and it will give you back what version of the API is deployed. So we will treat this as two versions of an application. But these are just sample applications, so they don't do anything else. This is just for demonstration. And if you go to this GitHub repo, which I just shared, you'll be able to find the link to this tutorial series. So this has multiple articles on how you can work with APISIX Ingress, starting from the introduction and moving to more advanced features like plugins and like using the gateway API. All right, so let's get started. So what I have here is I have installed APISIX using Helm. This will install APISIX, the actual API gateway, the reverse proxy, and also the APISIX ingress controller. And I'm using Minikube to spin up my Kubernetes cluster. So I will expose the API gateway, the APISIX gateway to outside the cluster. And I have also deployed my sample application. And now if I go to my terminal and send a request to APISIX, let's see. So this is the URL. Let me just zoom it a bit. So this is the URL. This is where APISIX is deployed. So I'm trying to access APISIX APISIX outside my cluster. So it says route not found. So what we have here is we have deployed APISIX and we have sample applications, but APISIX does not know how to route requests to the sample application. So we have to create a route. So in order to do that, we will apply. We will create a Kubernetes resource that does this for us. So let's go to so this is an APISIX specific custom resource definition. So basically what this does is this configures APISIX to route traffic to those backend applications. So I'll just walk through this. So the resource type or the API we are using is APISIX route, which is a CRD, which is a custom resource defined by APISIX. And we will create a route and we will match all requests with hostname local.navendu.me and with the path v1, and we will route all those requests to the version 1 of our API. And for the second route, we will match all the requests with the path v2 and we will route it to bare minimum API v2. So this is what we will do. And we can configure this by doing a kubectl apply. All right, so this creates routes in APISIX. So what happened behind the scenes is we created a Kubernetes resource of type APISIX route, and APISIX ingress controller translated these resources to APISIX configuration, and now APISIX should be configured to route traffic between those deployed sample applications. So let's try the curl command again. And now it shows hello from API v1.1.0. Now if we use the other path, it should route the request to the version 2 of the application, right? And so that is also working. So this is just a basic example, but APISIX also supports the default Kubernetes ingress API. So Kubernetes comes with an ingress API out of the box, and you can also use that with APISIX. So APISIX, so you don't need to use APISIX specific resource definitions like APISIX route. You can use the default Kubernetes ingress definitions as well. So this might be when you are moving from different ingress controllers. So if you have been using the default Kubernetes things, let's say the Nginx ingress controller in your cluster, and you want to move it to APISIX. And if you have been using the ingress API, you can just copy paste that, and it will work out of the box. So let me show that. So this is the same configuration as what we did before, but it uses the default Kubernetes ingress API. So basically it does the same thing. It matches all requests with this particular host name, and it will route the path v1 to the version 1 of the API, and it will route the path v2 to the version 2 of the API. Now let's do something more complicated. Let's see. Let's try setting up a canary release. So this might be a common thing that most Kubernetes, most people using Kubernetes might want to do. So that is canary deployments. So to give an overview, basically in a canary release, you will have, you are trying to release a new version of the application. And what you will do is you will be routing all traffic to your existing application, and you will have the new version of the application on standby. And when you have the new version ready, you will route a small percentage of the traffic to the new version, and most of the traffic will be still going to the old version. And with this small traffic, you can test the new version of the application for any issues. You can test for how it is working. You can like easily, you don't affect the users much when you are using the new version. So you are only routing a small percentage of the traffic to the new version. And when you have tested the new version, and when you are confident that it is ready to be released, you can change the configuration, and you can use the router to route all traffic to the new version. So in this example, we'll be using APISIX to route these, to handle this routing. And in the first step, we'll be routing all traffic to the bare minimum API v1. And in the second step, we'll route 5% of traffic to the bare minimum API v2. And in the final step, we'll route all traffic to the bare minimum API v2. And if you go to the GitHub repo, you will find the Kubernetes manifest file that you can use to configure this. So let me remove the created route. Now I removed the route. So like just to show this to you, now that I have removed my route, APISIX configuration has been changed. So APISIX does not know how to route to your backend again. So when I run this, it will say route not found. All right. So let's look at the canary release manifest file. So again, this uses the APISIX route CRD. We name it canary release. We'll create a route, and we'll match all paths. So we don't want users to manually pass in a v1 or a v2 path. We will route these requests automatically. So we have two services in our backend: the bare minimum API v1, the bare minimum API v2. So initially we will set the weights to 100 and 0. So all requests will go to bare minimum API v1. So let's try applying that. So now if we try, we can like pass in any path. So let's just say API. It should route this traffic to the bare minimum API v1, and it does. So no matter how many requests you send, it will be going to the bare minimum API v1. Now for demo, I'll just change the weights to 50-50 so that you can see how the traffic is being split between these two backend services. So in order to do that, you can just update the weights here. So I change this to 50. I change this to 50. So traffic should be equally split between these two services. Let's see if it does that. Now to update the configuration, I just have to reapply the manifest file. So it says canary release configure. So what this means is we have updated the configuration, and now if we send request, it is directed to both of these backends with a weight 50-50. And in real world use cases, now the next step will be to route all traffic to the new version of the API. But like I think I have demonstrated how we can do that. Let's see. All right. So next, let's talk about extending APISIX ingress. So like if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask them in chat. I'll be happy to answer. So now let's look into extending APISIX ingress. So we looked at how you can use the APISIX custom resource definition to configure APISIX in Kubernetes environment. We also looked at how you can use the default ingress API. We looked at basic routing. We looked at how you can do traffic splitting. So now let's look at extending APISIX. So by default, the ingress API is not really that extensible. So it is like a common denominator that supports that basically has the bare minimum functionality of what is capable of Kubernetes ingress. So a lot of different ingress controllers use this API. So it should have that common denominator. It should have that common denominator of features. But the problem with that is that it is not that extensible. So APISIX has a lot of features. So, but the ingress API, the default Kubernetes ingress API, it is not able to expose those features. It is not able to show those features. It is not able to configure those features with its capabilities. So what the Kubernetes team came up with was annotations. So you can extend the capability of the ingress API with custom annotation. So this annotation, which says allow list source range, allows you to whitelist an IP address. So only requests coming from this particular IP address will be allowed. All other requests will be blocked. So let's try applying this this configuration. The rest remains the same. We have two backend APIs, and we are routing traffic between them. Now let's see if we can whitelist an IP address. So first I will delete the created route. Next, let's see. Now I can apply the annotation manifest. All right. Now if I send so now I'm able to access this API because the API we added here. Let's see. This particular I mean the IP address we added here is actually the IP address in with which we are sending request. So now if we change this, let's see. I can change this to so if the request is coming from a different IP address, let's see what will happen. So this should change the configuration, and now if I try accessing the API, accessing through Apache APISIX, I will get a message that your IP address is not allowed. So let me just delete this. Okay. So what annotations enable us to do is extend the capabilities of the default Kubernetes Ingress API. APISIX comes with a lot more annotations. You can find all these annotations in the documentation, which you can see from the GitHub repo. And you can also extend APISIX with plugins. So APISIX supports the default Ingress API, but more features of APISIX are available within the custom CRDs of Apache APISIX. So basically these two are interchangeable, but APISIX's custom CRDs support a lot more features because it is built by the APISIX developers. It is built by APISIX community. So APISIX has a lot of plugins as well. So if you go to the Apache APISIX the website, you will find a lot of plugins. So plugins are a way to extend APISIX's features, and this also works with APISIX in Kubernetes. So APISIX Ingress controller can also translate plugin configurations to APISIX configuration. And in this particular example, we will use the limit count plugin. So basically the limit count plugin does what it says. It limits the number of requests a user can send. So I'll just go back to my terminal. Let's see. Now, if you look at the, wait, let me, yeah. Syntax highlighting is always better for me, I guess. So we create an APISIX route resource. Where APISIX route is the CRD. We match the host, we match the path API, we split the traffic 50-50. But we add a plugin called limit count. So we are enabling this plugin and we are setting the count to 10. And we are setting the time window to 10. So what this means is we are limiting the number of requests to 10 requests per 10 seconds. So if each 10 seconds, this counter will reset and you will be able to send 10 more requests within the next 10 seconds. So let's try applying this. So if I go to the API path, it works normally. But now if I send, let's say 20 requests, so I copy this for loop and replace the IP with, replace the port with the port in which APISIX is deployed. you will find that almost 8 requests, or I guess 10 requests went through, and then it shows service temporarily unavailable. So it blocks the request. And now if you wait for some time and try it again, I guess we have waited 10 seconds. We are able to send more requests again. But now if I try it again, I can't send requests because the timer has not been reset. So what we did here is we used a Kubernetes native YAML file to extend the capabilities of APISIX. So these are Kubernetes native definitions. You can just configure APISIX with this YAML file. And finally, I want to touch upon using the Kubernetes Gateway API, and I will just open the floor to some questions, or like if you had some comments. So yeah, Kubernetes Gateway API is a relatively new API. So Kubernetes had this ingress API, but it had a lot of limitations. So people started developing their own CRDs, like the APISIX CRDs. Most of the ingress controller implementations, they have their own CRDs. But the problem with that is these CRDs are dependent on that particular implementation. So it is not exactly vendor neutral, or it is you cannot easily like switch between two ingress controller implementations. So that's how the Gateway API project was born. So the goal of the project is to basically unify the API and make sure that make sure to standardize the way in which we access services in our cluster. So this API is much more extensible and much more accommodating than the Ingress API, and it caters to different actors in this particular pipeline. So there are infrastructure providers, there are cluster operators, and there are application developers. So each of them need to only be concerned about their particular part in this whole structure. So the cluster operator can operate independently from the application developer, and the application developer can deploy their application or can configure their application independent of the cluster operator or the infrastructure provider. So it provides these layers of abstraction, and these are very much extensible. And yeah, and like you can find the reference for these for this API in this particular URL. But as an application developer, we are concerned about HTTP route. So HTTP route is similar to APISIX route, the ingress resource. Basically, it is the API with which we route traffic. So APISIX also supports the Kubernetes Gateway API, but the Kubernetes Gateway API is a relatively early stage project, and the APISIX's support for the API is also in an alpha, or we just moved to beta stage. But we do support the Gateway API. So let's see an example. All right, so currently APISIX supports the V1 Alpha 2 version of V1 Alpha 2 version of the Gateway API. That is what I think we support. I'm not sure if we support a later version. So we will create an HTTP router resource, and what we are trying to do is a canary release. So I'll try to talk from two different perspectives. Let's see. So we'll try to map this or lay it over with what we have in the APISIX CRDs. So we have some rules, and we have our backend applications, and we can configure weights. So this is how the gateway API abstracts out splitting traffic. And this is similar to how we did with the APISIX CRD as well. So there are some differences, but essentially, like, you can see the similarities with which the gateway API was designed. So while the gateway API was designed, it took inspiration from a lot of these custom CRDs from these different ingress controller implementations. And in essence, the gateway API has evolved to be evolved to replace these CRDs and these ingress resources. So still the gateway API is still in a relatively new stage. So the support is a bit behind, but I think in the future, like when the gateway API adds more features and add more opportunities for extensibility, more ingress controllers or more projects like APISIX will be implementing the gateway API more in a more robust way. So until then, like I think the best way to work with APISIX, at least work with APISIX, is to use the APISIX CRDs. But as the support for the gateway API improves, like we can shift to the gateway API, and I think it will unify every ingress controller implementations, and it will make this thing completely vendor neutral. Yeah, and that was it for the tutorial. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I have written a couple of articles on this topic, so you can follow it along. You can follow along on this GitHub repo, or like there is some more complete tutorial here. So if you go to the bottom, you will find the first article, and you can move your way up to using gateway API and other complicated features. So yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Yeah, I don't know if we are okay. Juan mentions one of the PMC members is contributing. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Pedro. Yeah, glad you found that helpful. And I noticed there was a session on. I mean, there was a note on gateway API. I think it was from Raghuram.
Yes. So yeah, that was from me. I wanted to discuss that as a topic, but you have already covered that. Yeah, it is in early stages. So since you mentioned and then you demonstrated, I removed that.
Okay. So like, are you looking to implement, like, use the gateway API?
Yes, one of the requirements for us is to look for API gateways that support Kubernetes gateway APIs. So when I looked at this Excel sheet that I shared, so it says that APISIX support for Kubernetes gateway API is in preview. Right? That's what I found. That's one question I had.
Okay, yeah. Wait, let me just. I just asked my teammate about the version with which we support. Yeah, I think we still support the alpha, the version I mentioned, V1 alpha 2, but the current gateway API version is in a V1 beta, I guess. So like I think we might be a couple of releases behind, but like it is like a priority within the APISIX ingress controller project, and like more people are working on it currently. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions or anything else to discuss on today's call? And wait, I'll also share the ingress controller project so that like maybe you can also track the project's progress. Let me. So yeah, like you can keep a lookout on this repo for updates or like updates to the gateway API support or like everything related to the ingress controller. Yeah.
And we had also very good, nice use cases demo. I remember from previous two our meetups from two different companies. Maybe you can have a look on our YouTube channel, like we publish it, especially about Kubernetes. He presented. He explains like why they choose the APISIX ingress controller as option to manage the traffic to the internal services. It was a quite nice talk, and thanks Namandu. I learned also a lot, like from the startup point to the advance on Kubernetes. Thanks.
Thanks, Oliver. Thanks, and I don't think there is anything else on today's call. I think next time will be on March. So we'll have more topics to discuss. We'll have more updates, and probably we'll have some guest speakers who'll be talking about how they are using APISIX, so that like we can learn from their examples and like learn all the different ways in which APISIX is being used. And if you are a user of APISIX, feel free to reach out to us like for any help, or if you want to share how you are using APISIX and get more inputs from the community, like you can do that on the call. So yeah, that's it. And thank you everyone for joining, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks all. Take care.